Hey everybody, my name is Jay Gordon. Welcome back to the Azure Cosmos DB Global User Group. And here we are for August. It's been a great summer here in New York City. I have spent a lot of time outside, and I hope wherever you are, you're enjoying this great period. There's been so much going on, so much to learn about the agentic application environment where we're thinking about data and how we're using it. There's so much going on lately. And I really can't wait for us to have a conversation today about Microsoft Fabric. It's a huge way of managing your data. We're going to be basically having one of our great cloud advocates come here today, talk a little about it. Before I do that, we talk a lot about how much Cosmos DB scales. And, there's a really good person to talk about it. And I want to just take a minute for you to hear a little bit about just how massive scale for Cosmos DB is.
ChatGPT needed a database that would enable petabytes of data storage, trillions of database transactions, and could support tremendous growth. And to do that, ChatGPT uses Azure Cosmos DB. In ChatGPT, as users interact with the app, conversations, prompts, and metadata are all stored using Cosmos DB. And this enables ChatGPT to maintain context across sessions for 500 million users, delivering a natural user experience with low latency and high reliability at truly global scale. And with real-time replicas of the database distributed across Azure regions around the world, ChatGPT can put data closer to its users, resulting in much faster responses. And it's what's offering ChatGPT the flexibility and scalability to handle its unprecedented user growth and trillions of database transactions.
That is always amazing to hear, just about the size of Azure Cosmos DB. When you think about ChatGPT being able to support that, it's tremendous. And for a lot of you, ChatGPT is part of your day. So that means Cosmos DB is a little bit part of your day. But you know what? I've got someone that's here to be part of your day as well. And that would be Anna. And Anna's going to help us out with getting prepared for this session. It is an interactive session, and we want to make sure that everybody is doing things the way we think you should be doing them. So Anna, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thanks, Jay. And hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Anna. I'm an event planner at Reactor. I'm joining you from Redmond, Washington. And before we start today, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. You can keep an eye on that chat. We'll be checking for questions for Jay to answer live. Our session is recorded. It'll be available to view on demand right here within 24 to 48 hours. With that, I'll turn it back to Jay. Thank you so much.
And you know what? One of the things that I think is great about always making sure that we have this code of conduct is that there's so many people from all around the world that come to Reactor sessions and watch it. So making sure we're all having a great time. And I appreciate you sharing with us. And let's make sure people know about the Reactor. Go to aka.ms/reactor to find out more. Anna, I think you'll have a survey for us. I'll talk to you later on in the show, okay?
Absolutely. Have a great one.
Cool. Thanks, Anna. Cool. So we've learned a little bit about the Reactor. We've learned a little bit about ChatGPT. Great. But now we have a really different subject, a subject that is extremely important. Microsoft Fabric. There are so many conversations being held about it. There are conferences about it. There's FabCon, US and Europe. It's such a big subject. And to have this big subject shared with you, it took me finding a really great cloud advocate. And here comes one. I am lucky to have Josh. Josh, thank you so much. You are from the cloud advocacy team. You are a cloud advocate. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So you came to me with a really great proposal. We're going to talk all about it. But before that, I think it's super important to always understand who our presenters are, where they came from as far as their career progress. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you got here today.
All right, thanks. Yeah. So, as you said, my name is Josh. I'm a cloud developer advocate. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. I've been a developer advocate for the last 3 years, and I joined the cloud advocacy team directly from the Student Ambassador Program. So, for those of you who know the Student Ambassador Program, I was one of the student ambassadors, and then got an opportunity to transition to become a cloud advocate here at Microsoft. And I've been doing this for the last 3 years, initially doing a lot of IoT stuff, and then eventually transitioning to data. So where now we focus around, everything operational databases, our analytical tools. And that's why I'm here to talk to you today about, databases, Cosmos DB, and also how all these integrates together with Microsoft Fabric.
That's exactly why we're here today. I can't wait to hear all about it. So I know you've got a presentation and a demo. So I'm going to bring up your deck, and then I'm going to hand the floor to you. I want everyone to know that if you are watching, please go ahead and share where you're from. I'd love to hear it. One little piece of feedback, Josh, that we're seeing if maybe you can get a little closer to your microphone. I think that there's a little bit of issue. I'm also going to crank up your microphone's volume a little bit.
All right.
There we go. Give me a test.
Right.
1, 2, 3.
Is this better? Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. If you're watching, everybody, hopefully this is a little bit better. But hey, we're live. These things we sometimes got to speak beforehand. All right, Josh, I'm going to go ahead and bring up your presentation. Everybody, go ahead, share things in the chat, and let us know where you're from and ask questions about the session. With that, Josh, take it away.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, so as I mentioned, today's session is on AI-powered intelligence with Azure Cosmos DB and Microsoft Fabric. And ideally, we're going to learn about Microsoft Fabric as a quick intro, and then dive deep into Cosmos DB and how all of this comes together and why we're even having this conversation today. And just to get started, when you think about the area we're in, we're talking so much about AI, and when organizations start thinking about their data, because whatever AI tools you build, whatever AI solutions you build, they're only as good as your underlying data. And so when organizations start thinking about their data and their data estate and how to unify their data estate, sometimes most of these organizations, they are going to struggle with cumbersome and sometimes costly pipelines when they're trying to unify the operational data for analytics and maybe even for machine learning and also for AI. And so this session, we're going to try to see how Microsoft Fabric and its integration with Cosmos DB, or rather integration of Cosmos DB with Microsoft Fabric, can be able to help you eliminate some of these traditional ETL processes and enables near real-time insights without impacting your production workloads. So just a quick overview of everything that we're going to cover today. I'm going to start with a quick overview, just a quick rundown of what Microsoft Fabric is, just to be able to give a quick background around that. Then we're going to look at mirroring and understand what is mirroring, the mirroring capabilities for Cosmos DB inside of Microsoft Fabric. I'm going to show you a demo. And then from that, we're going to take a step just beyond mirroring, where you have your Azure Cosmos DB database and look at the Cosmos database itself inside of Microsoft Fabric. So this is a new feature that is actually in preview, where you're able to create your Cosmos DB directly and manage it directly inside of Microsoft Fabric. I'm going to do a quick demo on that. And finally, we're going to wrap up with a summary and also maybe possibly a Q&A from the audience at the end of this session. So hopefully within the next 50 or so minutes, we're going to be able to cover all of this as well. So let's get started. What is Microsoft Fabric? So when you think about Microsoft Fabric, it's our end-to-end data analytics platform that allows you to do basically everything that you need for your data, whether it's data integration, whether you're doing data analytics, whether you're handling real-time data, or whether you're working with Power BI for your visualizations, or your analytics, Microsoft Fabric offers you a complete end-to-end solution. So it's not separate products, but it's just one complete end-to-end SaaS product that allows you to do everything that you need for your data. So when you think about data integration, we have a workload for that called Data Factory that allows you to connect virtually to anywhere your data resides. We have over 100 different connectors that can connect to virtually anywhere your data is residing. And we have a workload called the analytics workload, and the analytics workload has 3 workloads that roll up to it. So we have like the data warehouse, the data engineering, and the data science workload. And each of these particular workloads, they allow you to perform particular tasks. So for example, the data engineering workload is going to provide you, with a Spark environment for you to perform your data engineering needs, whether you're doing data wrangling, whether you're doing data transformations at scale, you're able to do that with the analytics workload. The databases workload, which is most likely where we are going to look at on the second half of this presentation, has 2 operational databases that come into Microsoft Fabric. So initially, when Microsoft Fabric was announced, it was more of your analytical. It housed your analytical tools, your analytical processes. But now with the databases workload, you end up having as well your operational databases offered directly within Microsoft Fabric. And currently, we support the SQL database and also Cosmos DB, both which are in preview. Then we have the real-time intelligence workload that allows you to handle your real-time data. You can be able to react in real time to that real-time data as well. And we have the Power BI workload, which most data professionals have interacted with in the past, because it's going to allow you to perform your analytics, create your dashboards, your visualizations, and so on and so forth. And all of these different workloads, they are built on a common foundation of AI. So that means all these different workloads, they have some AI component or some AI features that enable you to become more productive. So you have a co-pilot powering all these different workloads within Microsoft Fabric. And for your data engineering, data science, and even data warehousing needs, you have AI infused inside that can be able to help you with things like code generation, code completions, code explanations, and so on and so forth. The other common foundation for Microsoft Fabric is OneLake. Think of OneLake as your OneDrive, but now for your data. And that means all these different workloads, they store their data inside of OneLake. And that means they all need to store data in the same format. So they all store data in a common open format, the Delta Lake format. And that is important because all these different analytics engine, whether it's the Data Factory one, whether it's the databases, whether it's the analytic workloads, they all might be working with the same copy or the one copy of your data that resides inside of OneLake. And then we also have a common foundation of governance using Microsoft Fabric, using Microsoft Purview. So essentially, that's Microsoft Fabric. It's offered to you as a SaaS product, software as a service, meaning you don't have to do a lot of tweaking to customize different features and to create different workloads inside of Microsoft Fabric. It's as simple as just clicking the new item button, give it a name, and you start working directly on the particular task that you're working. So think about Microsoft Fabric. It's a suite of all these different workloads or these different tools, each that are built for particular personas, like a data engineer, a data scientist, or a BI professional, and also built for a particular task. And so the other thing I need to again clarify or emphasize, it's not a bundle of products, but all these different workloads have been re-engineered to be able to work together seamlessly with a unified experience, a unified architecture, and also a unified business model. So that's basically it about Microsoft Fabric. And so when we start thinking about Microsoft Fabric and how you bring your data inside of Microsoft Fabric, one of the things that has been very important for us when it comes to you bringing your data is, one, reducing data duplication and reducing data movement from the various sources that you have. So we have different ways for you to bring data inside of Microsoft Fabric. One of the most common ways, or the go-to way in many scenarios, is through Data Factory that, as I mentioned, has over 100 different connectors that can connect virtually to anywhere your data resides. And you can be able to connect to that and copy your data into OneLake. But in some cases, you do not want to move your data, you do not want to copy data. And so we have different ways that we can allow you to do this. And one is through shortcuts. And so we have shortcuts that can allow you to virtualize data from different places, from various clouds. For example, you can create shortcuts to Azure Data Lake. You can create shortcuts to the Azure Blob Storage, to Amazon, to Google on-prem. And when you create these shortcuts, you do that without data duplication. The other way you can be able to bring your data into Microsoft Fabric is through mirroring, which is one of the things that we're going to look at today. And so for databases like Azure SQL DB, Cosmos DB, you're able to do database mirroring, which keeps alive synced replica inside of OneLake and makes it ready for analytics. So you're able to maintain a replica inside of Microsoft Fabric, or rather inside of OneLake, which is a replica of your existing database that you've hosted elsewhere. And in some cases, we only have support, like, as you can see from this slide, we only have support for mirroring for a few databases, like Azure SQL database, Azure Cosmos DB, and we are continually increasing the number of databases supported for mirroring, but we do not have to, you don't have to wait for us to bring those different database sources for in Fabric to support mirroring. And so one of the other ways we allow you to do mirroring is through something called open mirroring. And with open mirroring, partners and applications can be able to push data directly into Microsoft Fabric using open APIs and Delta tables. So this gives you a modern way to unify your data estate without the usual complexity that traditional approaches had. And so moving forward, as part of this presentation, we're going to narrow down specifically into mirroring, and in this case, Azure Cosmos DB mirroring, just to understand how it works. But I think up to this point, you kind of have this quick overview of what Microsoft Fabric is and the various ways that you can be able to bring your data into Microsoft Fabric. Now, let's take a deeper look, or a closer look into Azure Cosmos DB mirroring inside of Microsoft Fabric. Now, as I mentioned, Cosmos DB mirroring, it's a new feature inside of Microsoft Fabric. It's also currently in preview, and it allows you to, or rather it provides you with a seamless and a continuous way to do replication of your Azure Cosmos DB data into Microsoft Fabric, into the OneLake inside of Microsoft Fabric without requiring any ETL pipelines. So traditionally, you had to bring your Cosmos DB data into an analytics platform, to use this data for analytics, for your reports, for ML. You had to create ETL pipelines, and that means you had to go ahead and set up your ETL pipelines, whether using Data Factory or any other data integration tool, and then orchestrate all of that so that your data moves from Cosmos DB directly to your analytics store. But in this case, with mirroring, what we do, you do not need to set up these ETL pipelines, and that means that your operational data in Cosmos DB, and in this case, we currently are supporting the NoSQL API, is ingested into Fabric, or rather into OneLake, in near real time. So typically, as you're going to see this in a demo, within minutes, in less than a minute and a half, or in less than 2 minutes, you're able to have your data. You're able to have that replica of your data inside of OneLake. And another thing that becomes very, very important is that this replication is going to happen without any performance impact or any extra RU consumption on your source Cosmos DB. And the reason as to why this is the case is because it's going to leverage Cosmos DB continuous backup stream instead of the live transaction feed. As you're going to see, before you set up mirroring for your Cosmos DB, one of the things you need to enable is continuous backup, because the mirroring process itself doesn't rely on the live transaction feed, and that is good because you do not have any performance impact, or you do not have any extra RU consumption on your source Cosmos DB. Now, once you've correctly set up mirroring, and your data, or rather your replica, is already created inside of Microsoft Fabric, the data is going to be stored in an open Delta Lake format. Remember, I said all the different workloads inside of Microsoft Fabric, they store and retrieve their data using the open Delta Lake format. That means once you've mirrored your Cosmos DB, you're going to make this data available immediately. It's going to be available to all the analytics engine inside of Fabric, whether it's the data science or data engineering workloads, whether all the other various workloads. Your data is gonna be available to them, and that means you can be able to start running your T-SQL queries over these data using the Fabric SQL Analytics endpoint, as I'm gonna show you in a demo. And you can be able to use your Spark notebooks for data science, or you can be able to access that data in Power BI for your dashboards. But even beyond that, you can be able to start using this data together with any other data that you might have stored inside of Microsoft Fabric. But beyond that, as I mentioned, all the workloads inside of Fabric, they have this common foundation of AI. So one of the things you're going to see is that all the different copilots inside of Microsoft Fabric, or whether you're using the different AI-powered experiences inside of Microsoft Fabric, you'll start being able to leverage these AI-powered experiences on top of your data. And that means you can be able to start querying your data in natural language to get business insights instantly when you're using the AI-powered capabilities inside of Microsoft Fabric. Now, what are the key benefits? Why would you even consider to do mirroring for your Cosmos DB? I believe the benefits are more than these, but I'm just going to focus or rather highlight on these particular ones. The first one is zero ETL replication. You're able to directly integrate Cosmos DB into Microsoft Fabric, because mirroring is continuously replicating your data into OneLake without complex pipelines. You thus are able to eliminate delays and even your maintenance overheads. You also get near real-time insights, because all the new transactions that happen in Cosmos DB, they are going to be reflected in Microsoft Fabric within a few minutes. That's going to enable up-to-date Power BI reports, or your AI models are able to react quickly to business changes. And you move away from having, for some of our organizations, this becomes a game changer, because some organizations that are used to waiting up to 24 hours for data warehouse ETL jobs, they have these changes really reflecting in near real time. But also importantly, as I mentioned earlier, there is no impact on your operational DB. So mirroring is not going to have a performance cost on your Cosmos DB workload, because it doesn't consume any RUs, and also it doesn't slow down transactional operations, and thus your source remains untouched while your data is as well synchronizing in the background. The other key benefit is that you have unified and real-time analytics. Once your data lands inside of OneLake, it's already in Delta Parquet format, and that means you can easily join it with other data inside of Fabric. For example, you can join the data that you've mirrored with your warehouse tables, with your lake houses, and you can start running advanced analytics. For example, you could join your Cosmos DB data with your relational data in a single T-SQL query or a Spark job. Power BI can connect to it via direct link for fast reports without actually directly importing the data. Beyond that, as you're going to see, we also have a rich tool support. Once you've mirrored your data inside of Microsoft Fabric, each mirror database is going to come with a SQL endpoint that you can be able to use familiar tools like maybe the Visual Studio Code's SQL plugin or the SQL Server Management Studio, and you can use these familiar tools to explore your data. Your business users can build no-code queries or views on top of this mirror data using some of the tools and functionalities we have inside of Microsoft Fabric UI. And all of these queries are going to be operating on the read-only mirrored copy. So they're not going to be operating like directly against all the changes you're making. It won't be made against your Cosmos DB, but they're going to be made on your read-only mirrored copy inside of Microsoft Fabric. And the last key benefit that I'm just going to touch on is, and I think I had alluded to this, is that the data inside of the mirror data from Cosmos DB can easily be joined with other mirror databases. You can be able to combine and do you can do a query that combines this data against other different sources of your data inside of Microsoft Fabric. And just to wrap this up in terms of key benefits is the AI and Copilot integration. So once you have your Cosmos DB data inside of Fabric, you unlock AI scenarios. For example, you can use Fabric Copilot to ask questions about fresh operational data, or you can apply machine learning in Spark on the latest JSON records, and therefore you're able to you effectively bridge the gap between your transactional data and your analytical processes and the data from your operational from the operational databases. Now let me spend a few more minutes just to basically go through the whole process of how this actually works. So when you enable mirroring for your Cosmos DB database, and I'm just gonna quickly go through these and then jump into the demo. When you enable mirroring for an Azure Cosmos DB database, and currently only the NoSQL API accounts are supported, Fabric is going to create an initial, or is going to take your initial snapshot of all the data, and then from that point, it's going to apply incremental changes. So whether it's your inserts, your updates, your deletes, it's going to apply these incremental changes to OneLake in near real time. And now this will be relying on Cosmos DB continuous backup feature. So the moment before you enable mirroring, or before you start creating a mirrored database inside of Fabric, the first thing you need to do is you need to enable the continuous backup feature on Cosmos DB, and you can either do the 7-day continuous backup or the 30-day continuous backup, and then you can go ahead and set up your mirroring. And then from there, once you've enabled the continuous backup, and then you go ahead and create your mirrored database, Microsoft Fabric is now going to manage the schema drift by auto-adding new columns for JSON properties on the fly. So like if you go ahead and add new columns, if you go ahead and add new JSON properties on Cosmos DB, it's going to go ahead and add new columns for your new JSON properties. And so that means your mirror database is always going to be in sync with your Cosmos DB, and you can be able to monitor the replication status as well. So you have the visibility in terms of how replication is going on. And just to mention, some of the early adopters of Cosmos DB mirroring are actually reporting dramatic faster insight generation. In some cases, some organizations are noticing that they are getting up to 5 to 10 times faster data freshness as compared to their previous ETL pipelines that they had before. So this kind of improvement is enabling reporting, like for example, within the same day or within the same hour rather than a day later, which becomes a competitive advantage in fast-moving domains. So I think I've just gone through a lot of explanation in terms of mirroring in Cosmos DB, and I think at this point it would be just good if we just dive deep into a demo. So I'm gonna switch to my browser, and and so here I'm on the Azure portal, and I had created these ahead of time just so that we can save on time during the live stream. So I have my Cosmos DB. I have a Cosmos DB account here called Java Core Operations, and inside here, if we go to the Data Explorer, you can be able to see some of the data that I have inside of this Cosmos DB. I only have a few containers. I only have 3 containers. I have an orders container, a products container, and a retails container. And you can see the various these different containers. They have data in them. So like order items, has the different orders made and the associated order line items and so on and so forth. The product items list the various products that this retail store is selling, and then the retail items basically is listing the retail stores and also the different inventories in those retail stores. So these are the 3 containers that we have, and I would want to create a mirrored database of this Cosmos DB account inside of Microsoft Fabric. So as I mentioned, for you to do that, you need to enable continuous replication. And so to do that, one, you have this button here, the mirroring in Fabric, that shows you the different steps that you need to take for you to allow for you to be able to perform database mirroring. So you can see for here, I've already enabled continuous backup. But if I hadn't done that, it's going to list the instructions that you're supposed to follow for you to enable continuous backup, and then it gives you all the various steps that you need to do all of that. And so just to show you what that means is if you go to your settings, if you go to the settings tab and you scroll down to, sorry, scroll low. So, okay, so if you come to your settings and click on replicate, not replicate data, sorry. You just search for it.
And just as a reminder, everybody, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Let's definitely give some of the things that we've learned and things that we're not certain of. Let's make sure that we bring it back to Josh while we have him here. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I'm going to hand it back to you, Josh.
All right. Seemingly forgetting. Jay, do you remember where the continuous backup is? Just read it. So let me switch up to
which continuous feature are you looking for?
So I'm looking for the continuous backup. I'm not sure why. What has changed? That should be in the.
Sure, 1 second.
I think it should be in the settings. Features, no.
It's under settings, and there's backup and restore, and then you can set what kind of backup policy you'd like. So go under settings,
Settings,
and then you should have features, or under under settings you should see backup and restore.
Yeah, that's what I've been looking for. I think I'm just gonna have to refresh the whole page. I'm not sure why. It should be here somewhere. Backup and
Yeah.
yeah. Not sure.
Are you on a free account? What kind of
No, I'm actually on a. I did this earlier because it's already set, but I'm unable to go back and show the audience where to find it. I'm not sure what has changed between the last 2 hours when I was here.
All right. Well, real quick, let me show everybody really fast what he's talking about.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So
That happens.
You can see it right here. If you go to the left rail in Cosmos DB, you can see here under settings. Let me go ahead and add myself to the stage.
Yeah.
There we are. If you take a look, let me make it a little bit better. If you look here on the left rail, you'll see all our features, and you'll see that there's settings. And under settings, you can go ahead and you can set what your backup recovery policy is. You can change to continuous mode if you need to, or periodic.
Yeah. And I think my question is, once you've changed that, does that mean you can't, that disappears? Because I wasn't certain that that's what happens.
You know what? I'm not sure. I've never seen it like that before. So, because I've never configured Fabric the way you are, so I don't know if it makes a change. So,
yeah, but I think we can have these offline just to confirm whether that's what should be happening or not.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. So basically, thanks, Jay, for that. So basically, that's how you enable That's how you enable continuous. That's how you enable continuous backup. And so once you've done that, that's the only thing you're supposed to do from the Azure portal side. And then from there, you can go ahead to Microsoft Fabric. And then I'm going to create a new item. And here I'm going to search for Cosmos DB and mirrored database. And then from here, I'm just going to now start creating the connection to my Cosmos DB account. So I'm going to select the source as Cosmos DB, and I'm going to come back here and copy the URI and bring this inside of Fabric. Once I have done that, I had already created the connection. So ideally for you, it's going to ask you how to create your connection, whether it's an account key or using your organization credentials. So I had already set up this beforehand. And so we're going to give this a few minutes for it to complete connecting. Okay. Which screen am I sharing? Okay, I'm sharing the correct screen. Okay, so once it's made the connection to the you've made the connection to the database, the next thing is you should be able to see it here, and you should be able to connect to our database. So it's still loading. Just give it a few more minutes. As we're waiting for this, I see we have a question on chat where someone says, please discuss the architecture for data drift. You mentioned continuous backup, obviously alerts, but what other methods are best practices? Okay, I'll finish setting up that and then answer that as this is connecting. So I'm going to connect to my database, and from here, it should be able to fetch the various containers that I have in my database. And you can see it gets all the three containers. We have the orders containers, the product, and the retail containers. And I'm going to select all the three containers. And then this is checked by default. So automatically mirror future tables. So if any tables or if any containers are added onto the Cosmos DB, they're going to be replicated on the destination. And then you can change the name. I'm going to leave it the same. So this is going to be the name of our mirror database. And then I'm going to click create mirror database. So this is going to create the mirror database. And from here, it's going to start the replication process. So as we're waiting for this to complete, this ideally takes 1 minute, 1.5 minutes to complete. As that's happening, I'm going to answer the two questions that we have that are coming on chat. The first one is, please discuss architecture for data drift. You mentioned continuous backup, obviously alerts, but what other methods are best practice? So now, managing your data drift is basically absolutely critical when you mirror your Cosmos DB into Fabric. But the good news here is that Microsoft Fabric is going to handle some of the basics for you. So, for example, it's going to auto add some of the new columns for your JSON properties, and it's going to keep your mirrored tables in sync. And as you saw here, if you add new tables on your source, these are also going to end up with the these are going to end up into the mirrored source. So at least that's one thing that Fabric is gonna help with. It's basically going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, but also some of the different architectures that come into mind. One is, once you land your data into Microsoft Fabric, you can use the layered approach inside of Fabric. So, for example, the medallion architecture, for instance. So, you can treat the mirrored data as your bronze layer, and then you can start building your curated your curated silver and gold layers, and maybe you might be augmenting this with even other data that is coming directly from Microsoft Fabric. it's also important for you to watch the replication health. One of the things is when replication directly from Fabric here, you can be able to monitor your replication, and you can have this filter where you can be able to see all the running ones, the stopped ones, the failed ones, the running with errors. And so it would be important for you to, watch for your replication health, and just see if any of these are failing, and things like that. So I think those are some of the few things that come in mind. And also, as you had me mention, Microsoft Fabric helps you handle governance and lineage, and so therefore, documenting your sort of these contracts inside of Fabric and tracking lineage with Purview, that might be also some of the other things that might be the other thing that comes into mind in terms of some of the architecture. But in terms of data drift, I think Microsoft Fabric is going to handle most of the heavy lifting for you. There's another question in terms of the limitation for Cosmos DB in Fabric. Let me answer that when I come to the slide where we talk about the comparison between the Cosmos DB databases, the mirrored one, the standalone Cosmos DB experience in Fabric, and the Azure Cosmos DB. I'll tackle that at that particular point. Now, coming back here, you can be able to see, once you've set up mirroring, you have this this panel here where you can be able to see the status, and here you can see this is running, and you have this refresh button that allows you to refresh, and you can be able to see all my mirrored tables. All my rows have been replicated, and so you can see, like, for example, for products, all the 180 rows have been brought in. The orders, we had 30,000 of them, they've been brought in. And you also have the retail one, had 247 rows. All of those are coming in. The other thing you're gonna see, we have this that shows just that a quick overview of the properties for your mirror database. You can start create a semantic model directly here, and start taking your data to Power BI. You can query these in T-SQL, and we'll see that in a few. You have a button here for stopping your replication. You have this cogs icon here that it basically is a settings, opens with the settings panel, and you can be able to go ahead and set different info about this. But if you've used Fabric, if you've created like Fabric before and you've created a lakehouse, you always get this SQL analytics endpoint that allows you to start querying your data with T-SQL, and that is the same case for mirrored databases. Once we create our mirrored database, you also get the SQL analytics endpoint. And if I switch between the mirrored database view and the SQL analytics endpoint view, which you can directly do from the top right here, you can be able to see, brings me to this experience that looks, if you've interacted with warehouses, data warehouses in Fabric, brings you to a similar view. So you have your schemas. You have your schemas here, and you have your queries, and you also have your models, your model layout here. And if I go under schema, we have the default DBO schema, but we also have this schema called online sales ops. So this is the schema from our mirror database. And if I expand that, go to tables, I can be able to see my tables are coming in here. These are directly coming in from Cosmos DB, the same way for products, and the same way for retail. And I can be able to start writing queries. So for example, I can do a new SQL query, or you can do low code with the visual query. But for example, just a new SQL query, you can easily do select all from, let's select all from, let's maybe just do the retail. So I'll do online dot retail, and even maybe I can do where. So for example, for retail, we can just say where dog type. So you can say select from where dog type is equals to stop. And you can just be able to write your normal SQL queries and execute these against your mirrored database. The other thing I would like to show you, and you can be able to see that goes ahead and does the execute. So you can just write your normal TC queries and execute that against your mirror database. But also just to show you that you can do more than that, just allow me to zoom out a little bit here, just so that I can show you more. You have this button here called Open In, and as I mentioned, you can be able to use the familiar tools. You can open this in VS Code, you can open this in SQL Server Management Studio, you can download your database, SQL database project, and use this in your in VS Code or in your project. And so you can be able to do all of that directly with your mirrored database inside of Microsoft Fabric. Right, now I'm going to switch back to our slides just so that we can continue. All right, so that's how it actually works. So that was a quick overview of how mirroring works and how easy it is to set up mirroring for Cosmos DB inside of Microsoft Fabric. Now, I want us to switch to the second part of this presentation. Now, this second part introduces Cosmos DB in Microsoft Fabric. Now, this is a new offering that is also in preview that now brings the power of Cosmos DB directly into Microsoft Fabric. So essentially, you have your complete Cosmos DB. Doesn't have at the moment, it's still in preview, so not all Cosmos DB features are supported in the Cosmos DB in Fabric, but you end up having Azure Cosmos DB directly inside of Microsoft Fabric. So instead of creating your operational database on Azure and then mirroring, you create your operational database directly inside of Microsoft Fabric. And so this is going to be your AI optimized NoSQL database within Microsoft Fabric, and it's going to be using the same engine as your Cosmos DB for NoSQL on Azure, but it's going to be delivered to you as a native Microsoft Fabric workload. Now, that means data engineers or developers can be able to provision this database directly inside of Microsoft Fabric alongside with your data warehouses, alongside with your lake houses, and you can be able to manage all of these directly within Microsoft Fabric as you manage all your other workloads. Now, just to highlight, the database workload that doesn't only support Cosmos DB, but it also supports SQL database. But for purposes of this conversation today, we're going to focus only on Cosmos DB. So a quick overview. The database offered to you instead of Microsoft Fabric is going to be offered to you in the same manner as all the other workloads, as software as a service. And so then we sort of remove the walls between your transactional and analytical stacks and applications. And we also try and unify your complete data estate as a key enabler for all your AI applications. Now, with Cosmos DB being a native part of Microsoft Fabric, now you're able to build cloud-scale transactional apps and analytical workflows in the same platform. So, for example, you might handle an e-commerce application's live product catalog and orders in Cosmos DB. At the same time, you perform near real-time analysis on sales and inventory all within Microsoft Fabric. And so you do not have to manage these separate Cosmos DB accounts or Spark clusters or integrate Azure services manually. So all of this is offered to you from within the same experience. Now, because of time, I think I'm just going to dive directly into a demo, and here I'm going to bring a separate screen, and I hope it's visible. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I think that's it. And here I have this particular workspace, and I had already created a Cosmos DB account. And so creating a Cosmos DB inside of Microsoft Fabric, you'll notice this is going to be a completely different experience than what you're used to on Azure Portal. And I can easily come here and create a new item and search for Cosmos DB. And I have Cosmos DB directly here. As you see, it's in preview, and you just need to provide a name. So for example, I can say Java Sales Ops 2 because I have created one, and just like that, you don't need to specify throughput, you don't need to configure location and all of that. It's as easy as create a new item, provide a name, and that's it. And once goes ahead and creates your Cosmos DB. If I go back to my workspace, you can be able to see it goes ahead and creates the Cosmos DB. And right here, we are in the same experience. We are in the Cosmos. We are in Cosmos DB, and I can easily create containers in the same way I would create a container inside of the same way I will create a container inside of Azure on Azure Cosmos DB. So I can provide the container a name. For example, I can say products. I can provide it with a partition key. For example, let's say code, and then okay. But before that, you can see we even have a container vector policy, and so that means some of the features that you have interacted with Azure Cosmos DB on Azure Portal, the support for vector store, some of those features you're going to see some of those built into the Azure Cosmos DB inside of Microsoft Fabric, and it's just like that. So I can be able to start creating these, and I can be able to access items and so on and so forth. So let me switch to one that I already have here that is already populated with data. And you're going to see it has the same containers as the other one. We have the orders container, and you can see the same way, your partition keys, you can be able to view the different items you have inside here. And you can be able to use this inside we can be able to use this across the various workloads. Now for developers, because the other question will be, okay, this is an operation database, I have it inside of Microsoft Fabric, how would I use it within my applications? So one of the things that you can be able to do is, if you click on the settings icon and click on connection, you're going to see it provides you with an endpoint. And using this endpoint, you can be able to use the same Cosmos DB SDK. So whether you're building your applications in C#, whether you're building your applications in Python, in Node, you can use the Azure Cosmos DB SDK and use this endpoint and connect directly to the database that you have inside of Microsoft Fabric. So that's one of the ways you can use the Azure Cosmos DB SDK. But beyond that, one of the other things I want you to notice is, for this particular Cosmos DB we created, it also has a SQL analytics endpoint. I think that's one of the things I want you to note. Let me switch back to my slides. To the browser. Yeah, here. You notice, not this one, this one.
Josh, we've got maybe 7 minutes until we're out of time, and there are a few questions. So if you want to start getting to the end, definitely want to make sure that they get their questions answered.
All right. Yeah. So one of the things you notice is we have a SQL analytics endpoint here, and what that means, just to mention this just really quick, is the database you created inside of Microsoft Fabric also creates a mirrored replica for you inside of Fabric that you can be able to query against using T-SQL, and you can be able to directly integrate with your other workloads. And also for developers, wrapping up this up, you also can be able to create a GraphQL endpoint, and then you can be able to use this endpoint directly within your applications. All right. So just to quickly wrap this up, one of the things that we've been able to cover, and now I'm going to start answering the first question where someone asked the differences between Cosmos DB on Azure and the Cosmos DB experiences we have inside of Microsoft Fabric. One, whether it's through mirroring or whether it's through the standalone Cosmos DB application, the main difference is which service is going to be hosting your operational databases. So, for example, whether it's the mirrored solution or whether it's the standalone Cosmos DB experience, the main difference is going to be which particular service is hosting your operational DB. But the other thing with the Cosmos DB inside of Microsoft Fabric, not all features are actually available from Azure Cosmos DB to the ones inside of Microsoft Fabric. And so, to learn the main differences in terms of which features are actually supported, please use the links on your screen, aka.ms/Cosmos DB Mirroring, to learn more about mirroring in Cosmos DB, and also aka.ms/Cosmos in Fabric to learn more about Cosmos DB inside of Microsoft Fabric. Now, the other question that had come up here was this one. I think there was one. Is there any benchmark? Is there any benchmark on performance Is there any benchmark on performance of the replication with a very large database? So at the moment, or rather currently, there's no official throughput or latency benchmark for mirroring. As I mentioned, this feature is still in preview, and so I think just keep an eye on the docs. But just to re-emphasize on this, mirroring is actually designed to avoid RU impact on your transactional workloads. So even when you're doing mirroring, you shouldn't expect any performance impact or any RU impact on your actual Cosmos DB as the replicas are being created, or as the mirrored replicas are being created onto Microsoft Fabric. Then the other question was on how. Okay, there's the question on sharding. I'm trying to look for that. Yeah, how is Cosmos DB data sharding? How is Cosmos DB data sharding handled with? Okay, I'm not sure that I understand clearly, but the question is, how is Cosmos DB sharding handled? I think it's handled with data store in OneLake. So the short answer is, when you mirror your Cosmos DB into Microsoft Fabric, the partitioning is abstracted in some way. So Fabric is going to replicate each container into a Delta Lake table. I think you saw that. I had three containers inside of Microsoft. On Azure Cosmos DB, and I ended up with 3 Delta Lake tables with 3 Delta Lake tables inside of Microsoft Fabric. So you're going to replicate. It's going to replicate each container into a Delta Lake table, and then it's going to expose each of these tables on a read-only SQL Analytics endpoint, and then you can be able to query this table without having to manage or handle physical Cosmos DB partitions. So, as I mentioned, when someone had asked a question on architecture, that's why one of the ways you can do is, drop this or make this available, make the data from Cosmos DB through mirroring in your bronze layer, and then from there you can start curating your data in your gold and silver layers, just so that you can be able to end with good, cleaned data. Anyway, thanks for joining in, and Jay, back to you.
You did such an amazing job, and I can't begin to thank you. We had such a great audience. There's so many people watching today. As you can see, we had a lot of great questions. Josh, what's the easiest way someone could get started using mirroring? Like, what's the place they can go, say a website, to kind of like get them ready to make that change?
Right, yeah. So the docs are really a good place to start, and the links that I put on chat. So for Cosmos DB mirroring, it's aka.ms/Cosmos DB as Cosmos mirroring. For Cosmos in Fabric, just go to aka.ms/Cosmos in Fabric, and you get all the info you need to get started.
Fantastic. Well, before you go, I want to make sure everyone knows that we'd love you to take a survey. The survey will help give us a little bit of information on what you thought about today's session and what sessions we can bring to you in the future. But Josh, I would love to see you come back here with us sometime soon. This was so great, and I know that there are so many other data-related conversations that we can have with our community. I went ahead and I gave your LinkedIn to everybody in the chat. go ahead and I'll paste it once more for everybody to see. If you want to get in touch with Josh, if you have more questions we didn't get to today, you can find it right there on the bottom, linkedin.com/im/jcardiff. It's in the chat, it's up here. But Josh, thanks so much for being part of this today. Any other sessions, conferences, anything like that you want people to keep their eyes open on?
Yeah, for anyone heading to FabCon in Vienna, hope to see you there.
Always a big one, a very, very big one. Well, that's it for today, everybody. I think I got one for next month with someone who's done this before, and let me tell you, the person's spectacular. So until then, let's give everybody a good wave goodbye. Hey, everybody, take care. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us on the Azure Cosmos DB Global User Group. Bye now.